Hi, everyone, and welcome to AI Interconnect podcast, where PropTech meets AI innovation and real conversation unlock real growth. I'm your host, Laurent, and today I'm joined by someone who operates at a crossroad of investment, advisory, and strategy execution. Thomas Kaye, managing partner at Efficio Advisors. And Tomas and his team specialize in supporting private equity firm and operator through the full investment lifestyle, from sourcing to execution to growth acceleration. Um, but what really set him apart is how he blends hand-on advisory with data-driven strategy, all while keeping it lean, actionable, and grounded. Thomas, welcome to the show. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you so much to be glad to be here.
Fantastic. That's going to be a great conversation, and I always like to start with the story behind the story. Um, you've got you built a career inside the world of finance, M&A, private equity. Walk us through your path. What led you to create Efficio Advisors?
Sure. For me, I've been in the technology space for too many years to count, probably somewhere around 20. And I've always had an affinity for technology, the startups, right? So there's really a path for these people to scale their business, and oftentimes they struggle. So I've kind of stood up Efficio for that very reason, to help startups as well as established companies really identify their path to esco, to grow, and then also for those that are looking for investment, leverage my network or our network to identify potential investors into technology. And so we work with a lot of startups who are just trying to do that at some point, either pre-seed or established to get a series A or B. Wherever they are in that cycle, we're trying to match their need with the investment community. And we really have focused on the prop tech or the smart building or the built environment space, where I think it's been underserved for quite a while. And so we've done very well, and we really like to see the technology that's coming into the space. In fact, we're doing a couple things that we can talk about a little later about where those opportunities exist.
Very nice. Okay, that's a good start. And what were some of the gaps or frustration you saw in the traditional advisory model that made you want to do things differently?
Well, it's interesting when you're talking with startups. They believe they have built the best widget and the best mousetrap, and then oftentimes they could, but in many cases they aren't. And so I'm really coming to understand that their solution is not really as established as it needs to be. So the vetting process of through the technology to determine if there is a a market fit. And then the other thing is that you've got a lot of people that just maybe very entrepreneurial. They've established the technology, they've built it, and they've really lived and breathed it for so long. They're really too close to the situation to identify where maybe there's opportunities to improve. And I think there's also this thing in the past where if you were in a startup, you had to achieve some level of growth. It's typically this window of 5 million MRR that really gets an investor excited. But what I've seen lately is that there's quite a few investors now that are changing that model, and they're actually looking for technology that's maybe in its more of its infancy, and they're willing to take a bet on it, and they're willing to invest in a technology that may not even have established revenue, or they have not that level of revenue that most typical investment groups look for, which is that 5 million RR. So I think that's a real opportunity for folks like Efficio to get in there and align those resources. And for startups, for the most part, they just really don't have an understanding of the process involved. And so I think that's where we can come alongside them and help them kind of identify and avoid the mines or the pitfalls that a lot of people fall in. And there is also some apprehension for some of these technology startups because they don't have experience to actually look at a large PE or VC firm because they understand that there's a traditional concern that that PE firm is going to come in and just take over the entire business, and they'll lose some sense of self. They'll lose the ability to really make those decisions, and in some cases that is absolutely true. But I think if we're looking for startups to be aligned with potential investors who really want to invest in the leadership, invest in the technology, then there's a much better chance for success. And I think that's where we can really help them is try to maneuver that process. And it's there's a lot of dry powder out there. A lot of people are looking for investment. They're sitting on the sidelines. And I coach a lot of our clients just the way they frame their technology and how they position it in the market. Uh, they're better off to be for success. And again, that's just not something they can think about without ever having done it. Unless they're an established startup and this owner and CEOs have repeatedly done this, there's really no set playbook. And so helping them identify and establish a playbook makes them all that more successful.
Yeah, that's great. You often talk about closing the loop between strategy and execution. Um, can you unpack that a bit? What does that mean for your client in practice?
That's a good question. I think really identifying the strategy is probably the first thing you really need to do. Um, we have a process that we go through when we sit down with a client, and we really identify where they want to go, and we're actually going to walk back, right? So, what's your end goal in 5 years, or what's your end goal in 3 years, and then what's it going to take to achieve that? So they're establishing a playbook that they can systematically and tactically run through. And what typically happens in some of these startups is they just don't have the bandwidth, right? You have a CEO or a founder who has been invested in this for some period of time, and they just don't have a lot of resources internally to lift that. If you go to any startup, you see that the people that are there are wearing multiple hats. So identifying those individuals that are going to carry the ball and move it forward is critical. And then for the most part, if there's not that individual or individuals that can do that, identifying external resources to do that. So outsourcing some of those functions. So that's kind of where I think people really struggle is that they have an idea of what their technology can do. They just don't know how to identify how to scale that technology and make it valuable to the end user. And that's really where I think sitting down with an advisor and really tactically evaluating the business to determine where those opportunities are. And like I said earlier, most startups, the founders and CEOs, no disrespect, they have a lot of passion. They feel like they've created the best possible technology. And in some cases they have, in most cases they haven't. Not to say that they can't get there, but they really need to be critical of where they are as a business and critical of the process that they have, and then work with someone like an advisor who can say, let's proof test why you do the things you do. Let's proof test the processes you've established to determine if they're the most beneficial for the business.
That's great. Um, okay, let's go inside Efficio and give us a snapshot of how Efficio operate today. Who are you working with? What kind of problem are you solving day to day?
Yeah. Well, I think for our group, we've really identified the built environment as our kind of our play box or sandbox. So we're working with technologies that are supporting the built environment, and that could be anything that's got four walls, a distributed portfolio, assets. So it could be anything from a work order management system to an energy management system to a building management system to a refrigerant management system to an HVAC management system, agentic AI in regards to refrigeration efficiency, HVAC efficiency, field technicians in the field, all these technologies that support the built environment. So the owner operator of a property or a facility manager that's supporting the assets within that property, those are all tied together by technologies. And so what we evaluate is primarily technologies that support that space, and we are somewhat agnostic to the sector. So as long as that technology can be supported across multiple sectors, restaurant, retail, grocery, C-store, financial services, healthcare, they all have buildings, they all have portfolios, and they all have assets that depreciate. And so when we're able to look at technology and determine where that fits in that ecosystem, that built environment, that's kind of where we try to line out our targets. And we turn companies away all the time. We're very fortunate that we kind of have a pulse to the space, so we know what technology is coming in, and we can evaluate it pretty quickly. And there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, especially in the world of AI. So right now, AI is totally overused, but it's either AI powered this or AI powered that. In reality, there's very few people that are actually utilizing AI internally. They are looking to outsource AI to a service provider that utilize that. So I think there's still some reluctancy on the term AI, but there are some that are actually coming to market that are really doing some pretty cool things. Everything from field service to autonomous maintenance to, like I said, AI refrigeration management. And that's really exciting. And like I said, there's a lot of investors on the sidelines that are evaluating technology, and they believe there's a lot of dry powder. I talked to a private equity group recently, $200 million in their their bank that they're willing to evaluate and invest. And they just basically told us is like, here's our shopping list. These are the technologies we're looking for. Go out and find those individuals, and let's determine if there's opportunity. And that's a fun thing to do every day when you wake up and you've got a shopping list to go out and find companies. And that's kind of what we do too.
I love it. Yeah, it seems very fun. Um, you have supported clients in everything from consumer roll up to healthcare platform plays. And how do you adapt your model depending on the operator or sector?
Yeah. That's a good question. I think everyone is unique, and I get asked this 100 times a day. Is like there's really not a set playbook because it's all driven by the client. So depending upon the technology, depending upon the value prop, depending upon the markets they serve, we just try to match that out. In some of the cases, these playbooks have not been written. Especially in the AI world. So we really have to evaluate each individual opportunity as they come and then really vet through them and determine if the outcome is like somebody told me the other day is like, well, we have a software as a service platform. I said, software service is dead. It is absolutely outcome as a service that everybody's driving for. No one wants another portal. No one wants another dashboard. No one wants another password. They really want the idea that I'm going to invest in your technology or your service, your managed services, and you're going to give you the outcome that I'm looking for. So when I talk to these technology companies, I'm basically saying to them, listen, dropping off a black box on somebody's desk makes no sense at all. The idea is that if you don't have a managed service established, start one, because I think that's what people are expecting now. It's like, listen, your core competence is technology, mine is not. I'm going to pay you a fee. You're going to do the outcome that I'm looking for. And at the end of the day, I'll improve my efficiencies. I'll reduce my cost. I'll reduce my carbon, all these benefits. But at the end of the day, the technology has to drive that, and it's got to be outcome as a service.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, the SaaS is maybe not dead, but everybody want an ROI attached
Mhm.
to to the service. But
Yep.
let's I love it. Yeah, let's talk process.
Mhm.
How do how do deals usually start with you? Are you getting called a pre due diligence, or do you step in post transaction?
Another great question, and it really would depend on the opportunity, it would depend on the potential client. So, from a technology perspective, a technology provider, a solution provider who's established this technology and is considered a startup, they would engage us and to say, listen, we think we built the best widget, but we have really no process to scale the business. We really don't have line of sight to investment community. We really don't understand the internal processes of startups and how we scale them. Coming in, parachute in, evaluate everything that we have here, everything from our go to market strategy, our thought leadership, our branding, our sales enablement, our marketing, our CRM, everything. And that's a fun exercise. It's a painful exercise. And we will get, and feelings will be hurt because I think one of the other things too is We'll come in there and basically tell you maybe your baby's ugly, right? And or it's you believe your baby to be the most beautiful thing in the world, and it might be, but in some cases it might be ugly. So that's the startup side, and that could go from startup to establishment. On the PE side or the investment community, they come to us and say, "Hey, listen, you're experienced in the space. You're talking to these technologies. You are speaking at these events. You're moderating these panels. You got a great network of technology companies, and we really want you to start evaluating for us on this criteria." And in that case, we will just take that criteria, sit down with the PE firm, evaluate what they're looking at, and then we start stack ranking the potential investors. And then we just make introductions to those potential startups. So it varies depending upon the client, but the whole idea is really is understanding what that need is and aligning resources that we have to be successful. And for us, we're only as successful as our client's success, right? So we don't grow unless our clients grow. I don't get another referral unless I get one from a client that's satisfied. So we're very, very disciplined and detailed on what we're trying to achieve for the client. And there's a lot of touch points. It's not like we have a set plan and it looks like a playbook that you would have seen anywhere. It's custom for each client and it's driven by the outcome that they're looking for.
I love it. Very cool. Um, okay, let's move on to trends. Or what trend are you seeing in the private equity space right now, especially when it comes to sourcing, diligence, and post-acquisition value creation?
Well, there's a couple of things there. I do believe this trend is that traditional investment groups who are shooting for this 5 million MRR target before they even consider investment or even consider entertaining it, that model has been changed. So even the large organizations who had that set playbook to identify, the potential targets that had hit that $5 million threshold, that's changed. I think a lot of people are going downstream to identify technologies that are up and coming, and in some cases, they're making investment with no revenue generated, which is something you see very often, especially now when you're talking about AI technology, where people are just throwing money around crazily with the sole intent that if I hit 2 out of 10, I've done well. And so that's where I think the change is. I also believe too that in the past you had a lot of PE firms and VC firms that were leveraging a lot of consultancies that were the big four. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think there's now things like Efficio that pop up that are much more a niche in a particular market, and that those investors realize that well, you can go to Deloitte and EY and all that, they are not as close to the business, as close to the industry. And so I think that's a model that's changing. And I think that you said post market. I think you that doesn't seem to be changing as much that you might think. I think that process still plays out, but that's kind of my observation. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, I love it. And I may ask you twice the same questions, and I always love whatever answers. But
Right.
no, it sounds great. Obviously, trend will be the this AI assisted diligence. I'm sure will be a big part of,
Yeah.
of this new trend, and everyone's talking about AI. Some are using it. You mentioned it. Other are very skeptical. Skeptical. Where do you see real potential for AI in your world? And where is it
Yeah.
still hype?
Yeah. There's a, that. I love this question. I got asked a lot, and I hope I can answer it intelligently. Um,
Yeah, of
So
course.
I think that everyone, you and me, and everyone that listens to this, needs to be looking through an AI lens at everything, everything. And I think that every single person listening to this or watching this needs to be proficient in AI. And if they're not, they need to make that investment. There are tons and tons and tons of AI technologies out there. Not all of them are beneficial, but there are that are quite beneficial. And so, to your question about just leveraging AI to do some due diligence. Absolutely, but there still needs to be the human component, and you also have to take into consideration that when you're establishing building these large language models, they need to be in the framework of your business, not randomly out in ChatGPT or U.com or Claude. Invest in the subscription for that particular AI tool. It's yours, and then start establishing your large language models within it, as opposed to just randomly going out there. There's certainly tools like U.com that afford you the opportunity to go out and prompt intelligently and get the information you want and provide the sources that they've gathered that information for. Not everyone does that. So there is value in that, because at the end of the day, you're still going to have a human that's evaluating that. And I would say anybody that disregards that human involvement is going to be very disappointed, and probably uh, in a detrimental way. So there is absolutely value in that. I do believe AI, there is a tremendous amount of hype, um, but that's because it just not has been materialized. It's not materialized yet. I think there's going to be tremendous efficiencies. This is bigger than the internet. This is bigger. This is bigger than the stagecoach. This is it. This is really the deal that you need to make an investment in of your time. I tell my adult kids, put 2 or 3 hours a day in to understand and learn about AI. It will reap huge benefits. And in our world, we do, because in some cases we're utilizing technology or driving or promoting or having clients in the AI space, especially in the agentic space. So one of the companies I work with, they have built agentic AI agents for BDRs, for client success, for call center, for operations. And in that particular case, you're saying to yourself, looking at my business, is there an opportunity to put an agentic agent in place of a human? And that is absolutely being the case. I mean, you saw Shopify's CEO said that we'll evaluate every business process in our business from an AI perspective. And if an AI agent can do it, we're going to have them do it. There's a reason why Mark Benioff invested so much in agent, you know, agent force, is because that their goal is to have over, I think it's like 10 million agents established over the next 2 years. I think they're over at a million already. So people are saying that there's a process in place within your organization, looking at through the AI lens. Can you utilize some form of AI to automate that, improve efficiency on it, report against it? And when people start looking at that, they're going to leave their competition in the dust. And I really, really believe that if you do not fully engage in it and become conversant in it, you will be left behind, and it will be on you and you alone.
Yeah, I hope the listeners are listening. Yeah, definitely, you're right, and I agree. AI is fantastic, but AI need the operator, and those who are not familiar or don't want to learn will be left alone and
Yeah.
behind. Um, what are some of the bigger challenges you're seeing across your client right now? Uh, could be organizational or operational, or
Yeah.
maybe tech related, or all the above.
Certainly, from an organizational perspective, it's a challenge. I think when you're talking about startups and even to a small to mid-sized business, there's a limited bandwidth, and there's a lot of uncertainty with the economy, and there's a lot of uncertainty with things in general. And so finding that employee that is going to be there and tenfold the business, it's getting harder and harder to find. Um, there's certainly, from a tech perspective, I think most of these organizations even disregard our clients, just accept us as a potential. Is that we're inundated by all types of technology, and trying to evaluate and vet those is pretty hard to do just because of the rapid speed in which they come into it. I'm thinking of like CRMs and CMMSs and EMS, those types of technologies. There's just so many out there, and unfortunately, there's been such a disservice in educating the market space about those technologies that a lot of people have stubbed their toe or missed the mark, and there's a frustration building. I sense this frustration building, and by doing so, it just it slows down the adoption. And so for an organization to start evaluating technology, again, I probably would look to some outsourced resource to evaluate that. Certainly, if you're utilizing the tool like ChatGPT, it wouldn't take too long to say, here are the 5 CRM systems I want to evaluate. Here's my business. Here's my existing tech stack. Here's my potential budget. Spit at me out the priority level. That gets you so far. You still have to do some level of due diligence and actually, have human intervention. But that seems to be a challenge. Just the speed in which technology is being thrust upon any company and determining if there's value for them to invest in it. And then I think, because we play in the built environment space, there also is this point where I think the average age of a facility manager or a service provider is 55. So in 5 years, they're phased out of that space. And where's that tribal knowledge go? And where people are trying to struggle to find that next group of employees that have that knowledge base. And so there's a struggle there. And that really goes to the other thing, which is training. Most of the companies we work with, if they had an Achilles heel, it probably would be training not only their own employees, but their clients. So training is so critical. And I think that is an Achilles heel for a lot of people.
Yeah, no, definitely. We can discuss challenges about bottlenecks, of course. Um, I mean, execution fatigue is a big challenge as well.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned lack of data clarity. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it's part of education for your clients. Um, okay, looking ahead, I'd like to ask what do you see coming for the advisory space? Are we moving towards some more productized consulting, hybrid model, something else?
I think it would probably be a hybrid model. I think that the client is expecting more. And in order to do that, you're going to have to change your playbook to a certain degree. Or, I mentioned we kind of really sit down and align what the outcome is and work backwards and really sit down and ensure that we're doing that for the client. And so I think they expect that. The days in which, like, is somebody coming in there and open up their playbook and you just fill it out is long gone. And I think because you have these ancillary resources like AI to actually complement and support some of this due diligence, will only accelerate that. Um, where I think people should be cautioned is, again, leveraging too much of the AI resources to be the end all be all, because I think when they do that, they'll do a disservice to themselves. So I think from an advisory perspective, I do see a closer alignment from an advisory perspective to working with PE and VC firms to understand what's in their head and what they're wanting. And then I also see this idea where the startups are still required to just hit certain benchmarks and metrics, and unfortunately, it's just not their core competence. So I see more and more advisors being brought into that world where they really need to help them. It's maybe even more in a fractional role. I get asked, or we get asked quite a bit, do you do any fractional work? And it could be co-CEO, co-CFO, co-CRO. And in that particular case, it's pretty much on a limited basis, like a 6 month engagement, is pretty much where we start. And the idea there is that it is a fractional role, and setting the expectation with more than likely it's the board. So the board has said, we feel like we have a lack of something in this process. We want to leverage a fractional resource. Let's pull that resource in. So in that particular case, you're not even necessarily initiating that conversation with the existing C-suite. It's with the board. And that's a dynamic all in itself, because now you have one foot in the board and one foot in the business, and an interesting place to play, and it's a difficult place to play. But as long as you set the expectations correctly with the existing C-suite and the leadership team and the company as a whole, it can work out very well. When they don't and don't engage and don't set that expectation, more than likely they're seen as a direct threat, in which case it's not going to play out well, and there's going to be frustration on everybody's part, including the board. So we don't shy away from fractional roles. We just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and when we're able to do that, um, we can be successful and can help somebody out. And I think that again seems to be a something that I see as being more prevalent than it has in the past.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And what about you personally? Um, what are you most focused on building next inside Eficio?
Ooh. I'd love to say that I've nailed that down, but it's an evolution, and I really believe that we're at such an exciting time for anybody. And so I don't think we've tapped into the true value of AI. We use it a lot, but we haven't tapped into it. I really love the idea of the agentic world and creating agents to do things. And I think where I can see, if it was me selfishly, I would say Efficio establishes an AI framework that establishes agentic agents that we can insert into smart startup technology companies to accelerate efficiencies. Like I said, we work with two or three agentic companies right now, and we see them do that in the small business and medium-sized business. But it's just they're just scratching the surface. And I think if I was to say where we are in 5 years, I would say agentic agents are prevalent in not only our own business, but inserting them into our clients strategically with the goal of having an outcome that drives value and growth. And I think that you're going to see that too in a lot of these businesses. I think a lot more PE firms, VC firms are going to look at an existing investment and directly say, rather than throwing money to scale headcount, throw money and scale the agentic world and building that out. And I think that's absolutely going to happen. And I think, again, looking at my crystal ball, I think for the next short term, we'll certainly focus on that. But long term, I think it's going to be just part of our fabric.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what about launching new service lines?
Mhm.
Maybe
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't
for
know if it's
Eficio.
necessarily a service line. I think
No.
for us, because we have been considered a leader in the space for the built environment, there are some peripheral markets that we could consider. The CNI space is one that seems to be quite intriguing to us. There seems to be quite a bit of investment in that space. The field services technology that's out there, companies that are, you got KKR investing, 220 million in XOI. There's a reason why they did that. So I think we'll start monitoring where some of these big plays of investment are outside of what we consider traditional built environment, and maybe start tracking those. So I don't think our service line changes at all. I just think that we probably start evaluating technologies that are maybe outside of our current world. I love the idea of robotics. So we track a lot of stuff in Asia, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for robotics, and not everything from a humanoid robotic. Yeah, that's down the road, but just the use of robotics in surgery and healthcare and security. We work with a company now that does AI optimization for CCTV, and some of the stuff that they're putting together is really really unique. So we don't change our services. We just maybe look at a broader landscape of where we can play, leveraging what we currently do really well.
I love this. I love this, and I mean that would be another conversation. There's many
No, I'd
things we
love
can
to have
see.
that conversation.
What?
I'm an AI
Yeah,
nerd,
definitely.
secondly, shortly followed by robotics. So I track that space pretty closely right now.
Okay, it's well taken. We'll talk about that. What
Good.
advice will you give to to other advisors or operators who are navigating these shifts, especially around tech adoption
Yeah.
and scaling without burning out?
Well, I don't think. First of all, I don't think they give themselves enough credit. So they have a tribal knowledge, experience. They're probably not tapping into it efficiently. When I talk to peers and I talk to a lot of companies, I think that's probably one of the areas where they struggle. Is that there's maybe this little, maybe it's a lack of confidence, or maybe just a lack of understanding that they really have this value that they've accumulated over a period of time that can be monetized and can be shared in a way in which people will value it. So I think for those advisors who are considering, what do I do now? I would certainly tap into what they have done in the past. And then I would, it would be a disservice for you not to talk about how AI can help accelerate that. But I think a lot of people are just so skeptical, and it's because of the lack of use. I think when you talk to people that are fully entrenched and are AI enabled and are leading with AI in their business, um, it's like every day is a new day, and you see countless opportunities. And the biggest challenge I tell folks is that not that there's a lack of opportunity, it's a lack of focus. Because if we don't stay focused, we can go down a million rabbit holes and we don't get anything done. But if we're clearly focused, all these these resources that can accelerate our efficiencies are just mind blowing. And every aspect of your life can be changed. And so, somebody who's struggling with where they are in the world as it relates to advisory work or consultancy or just being some level of value to an organization, I would just tell them to focus on what they've done in the past, line out where they want to go in the future, and then start leveraging some of these resources that are available. And networking. Networking is the strongest tool out there. Anytime you can talk face to face, either it's through this or another vehicle, we'll establish a rapport. And I'm happy to talk to people all day long about the challenges they face because that's what I do, right? That's what we do. And it may not have any application for our business, but if you ask me, you have a problem, I'll give you what I think is the answer. And if I don't, I'll give you a resource. So networking is huge. And if you're not leveraging networking or leveraging resources like LinkedIn, shame on you. LinkedIn is another tool that people don't use well enough. And that's another thing that we kind of coach our clients on is that you have to have established a thought leadership, a personal brand, and really cut above the noise to make sure that your voice stands out above all the other things that are out there. And so those are other things. Networking is huge.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And thank you so much for this great advice. I'm sure the listener will be very happy. But yeah, it's so true. Relationship, but that's why we're here.
Yes,
We need we need to we need visibility. We need to meet people, great people. We need to learn from them, and bring a little grain of salt, of course.
right.
But this is life, and
Yep.
thank you for your advice. I I would love to have some quick fire question and can answer
Oh boy.
very
Okay.
quickly, or
Well, fire away.
your or 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 I fire away. No, your biggest misconception about private equity advisory.
I think that there
Or maybe
is,
there's not.
well, I think there's a belief that it's a complex world, and it's really not. Boiled down to its, you know, littlest thing is it's a relationship. So people, I think, are averse to doing that, that they perceive this to be this, you know, big elephant, and it's just not. In fact, the closer you get to it, you realize how small it is, and the same people are in the circle. And I think so. That would be one. It's just this preconceived notion that PE is this just, giant thing that it's hard and complex, and it's clearly not.
Ah, okay. Even me, I think it's a huge word and very mystery, but
Exactly.
we'll talk. We'll talk. We'll talk again. Yeah. um, one. one book or podcast, not mine, you recommend to every funder or investor?
Oh, well, I'll tell you this. I would go more on the tech side. And so I love Greg Shove at Section. So if you guys are not tracking Section and Greg's Section AI, great resource, is a free version, but again, invest, I think it's $1,000 a year or something like that. Great resource, great networking, all talking about where AI is driving in business. That's a huge one I like. Let's see. The
Nice.
the other ones I kind of dabble in, I love Tim Ferriss because he makes you think. So the Tim Ferriss blog is another one I kind of track. But there's so many out there. I'm
Yeah,
a
I know.
big I'm a big newsletter guy. I mean I'm an auditory learner, so I listen to podcasts all the time. But my news feed is just all in on AI. And so All Top is another one which allows you to create your own feed. So if you like technology or AI, All Top is one I would go to. And then the other one I think is just the newsletters I receive. And if someone said, "Hey Tom, tell me about those newsletters," I'd throw you a million that you can run and track. And some of it's redundant, but what I really like is, especially on the Substack side, is that you get some level of I don't know. There's individual experience that's layered into the Substack group, and again, you can subscribe to whoever you want. But I find that refreshing because it's not seem to be auto generated and it's not really seems generic. It seems genuine. And if I'm going to read something, it's got to be genuine. Semaphore Technology is one I track, and all the Semaphore stuff. I think the way they write is intelligent, and I think the other thing too is everyone has a different way of learning, but we would all agree that our learnings need to be in snippets now, right? We're a messaging, texting, snippet, video, TikTok world. So when you're trying to learn things, a lot of the way we start to learn and ingest is something like that. So there's all types of resources, and obviously platforms like yours. Um, People just don't leverage those, and you've got to make that time investment. You know, if you think you're going to do the same way your business today that you did 10 years ago and be successful, you're a loon. You're ludicrous.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. So make the time to invest in your future, and that's going to require learning. And whichever vehicle in which you use to learn, absorb it and make that commitment and make it a daily commitment. And just carve out time in your calendar. I'm going to have 1 hour today. I'm going to learn about AI. 2 hours a day. I'm going to learn about AI.
That's true. Now that's very. Yeah, I mean, you want to learn, and then you do some research, and maybe you get lost because there's so many things. But that's a great way to do. Work with your RSS and
Yep.
have the newsletter and follow your
Yep.
newsletters. And there's a ton of information there. If you select the right one, you cannot research everything and see
Yep.
everything. That's a great point, Tom. A mindset shift that change how you lead.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I'm a follower of John C. Maxwell. I've known John for 25 years. And if you aren't aware of John C. Maxwell, then become informed about John C. Maxwell. I think he's up to 65 books, all on leadership. And he also now has the John C. Maxwell Institute. But John is, I would, I would look at his top 5 books, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. That's a book that I would highly recommend people to read. And it's very much, you know, certain vignettes or it's carved out obviously in 21 steps. There's opportunity for you to learn from every one of those. Um, but for me, it probably is that you know I'd probably say more of a servant leader, or I'm more about making sure what I do for you is valuable. I'm not expecting really much in return. If you're a client, great, I love the money. But if you are just asking me a question, I'm going to think logically about what my answer will do to create value. And it may not create value today, but my goal would be create value tomorrow. And I'm not expecting anything in return. I mean, I consider myself a connector. And so if people are looking for something, I can probably run it down. And I'm trying to instill that in Efficio is that, listen, we're only as good as our last deal, right? And we have to consistently provide value. And when we stop providing value, then we're not going to be successful, and we're not going to be around. So the leadership has to reflect that. Lead from the front, elevate, lift people up. Encouragement's huge. I think that's a
Yeah, yeah. I love this. Makes a lot of sense. Um, to complete a little bit, I mean, you're definitely in order to learn. I think one great way to learn is to teach. I'm not much of a teacher because I never had the opportunity, but finding the right words, bring value in your answers to somebody ask you for something, is like teaching him something, like
yeah.
bringing you experience, and that's a very good point. Um, if if you had to build a business outside of advisory, what space would you go? Will you go into?
I would go right after the tech space. I'm so close to it. I think it's part of my fabric. I bleed technology. I am a nerd. So I mean, I get these wild hairs all the time and get pulled in some directions where I really think, wow, maybe I should do this. I also believe now with AI, there's opportunity to really accelerate that. So anybody out there who's trying to create some level of technology, no longer do you need to write code. You can have a vibe coding or no coding resource. So creating that technology still needs to be evaluated and vetted. Working with third parties outside in India, Sri Lanka, wherever it might be, that's much more accessible now than it ever has. So if I was to say we're going to shutter the doors of Efficio, it would be on it. I'd go right into technology, and I can see, and I've been approached by people before where they're like, "Listen, here's some money. Would you build out a framework of what this technology might?" And at some point, I will do that. I think it's just a time resource right now where I just don't have any time. But if I did have time and I carved it out, I would love to be a full blown entrepreneur in technology. I just think it's so much fun. There's so much energy out there and excitement, and it's a great time to do that. And I look at it often. I just haven't pulled the trigger because I really like what I'm doing now. But if a time opened up, if we got freed up in some time resources, I would probably consider doing it.
Yeah, you're still young.
Yeah.
Do we need to be an engineer to do that?
No, no, not at all. I know I'm going to alienate and upset some engineers, but the day in which you have to have engineers in place, you certainly would have to have a chief technology officer or a well versed engineer to kind of be that quarterback or that general contractor, if you will. But the days of having engineers writing code is it's just not. There's a reason why Microsoft dropped 5,000 people off their payroll. It was the engineers that were really supporting all the gaming support, and you'll see that across the tech sector. So I can write code today. If I wanted to create an app, I could do it in about 20 seconds. I just have to decide what I want to write, and that's all through no code or vibe coding stuff. So no, you don't need engineers. You do need an expert to oversee that, but you don't need a team of engineers.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And one thing you believe that most consultants don't.
Uh, the client is always right.
And you think the consultant don't think this?
I think a
But
lot
you're
of
right.
consultants believe. I think a lot of consultants that okay, let's say the knock against consultants is that they know everything, and that's just not the case. If I was hiring a consultant and they told me everything that they thought they knew, I probably would run. So for me, it's like When we are successful is when we establish expectations with our clients that matches the expectation of the client. And like I said, the client is always right. So I'm going to evaluate what their expectation is and work from that. Now, certainly there's going to be some disagreements and we modify and change that. But I think for the most part, people would say consultants think they know everything. And that's just clearly not the case.
That's very right. Tom, that was packed with insights, and yeah, it was. And thank you for sharing your journey, your thinking, and your perspective. I really appreciate how grounded and sharp your view of advisory is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It has been fun.
It was a great conversation.
Let's
That's
do it
right. And
again.
yeah, we'll do it again with every topics we mentioned.
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you. And that's it for today's episode of AI Interconnect. And if you enjoyed it, share it with someone who is building the future, or even better, someone who should be. And
Yes.
until next time, stay curious, stay creative, and keep building. Thank you.